I'm going to go ahead and get started, and we are recording now. And I would just like to welcome everybody to this Careers in Social Change National Service Programs panel on behalf of Professional and Career Development Services and the Office of Community Engaged Learning. We welcome you to the 7th installment of this virtual panel series. My name is Amanda Martin. I'm the Assistant Director of Community Engaged Learning here at Drake. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm going to be moderating this evening's panel. Before we really get into things, I would like to share a couple of housekeeping tips. So we are all social distancing. We may hear things in the background, family or pets or other home noises, which is totally fine, don't worry. But to help with that, we do just ask that anybody aside from our panelists, if you could please keep your video off unless you are asking a question or speaking, and same with your mic to eliminate some noise. Chat box, please feel free to ask questions in the chat box throughout. You can also raise your virtual hand through Zoom, and when it's time for questions, we can call on you, or my colleagues Crystal Stanley and Renee Sublicek-Lee also can share your questions aloud from the chat box. And we are recording the panel, so you can watch it again later or share it with friends who were not able to attend. We do have our previous 6 panels available to watch. You can find these on drake.edu/career/events. Now that we have those things out of the way, we are really excited to be able to celebrate National AmeriCorps Week this week. I myself am a proud AmeriCorps alum. I served 2 years as an AmeriCorps Vista at the Volunteer Center of Story County in Ames back in 2007, 2009. And the director of our office, Renee, is also an AmeriCorps Vista alum. So we obviously see the great benefits of the AmeriCorps program, and we're very excited to have additional alums on the call and current members today too, to share more about their experiences. AmeriCorps is just a great opportunity to give back to your communities, while at the same time gaining great experiences and other benefits. So we are fortunate today, all 3 of our panelists also are Drake alums, so go Bulldogs. We have Rachel Bruns, she's the Deputy Director of America's Service Commission, Jaslyn Coley, full-time AmeriCorps member in the Office of Community Engaged Learning, and Russell White, an AmeriCorps alum and contract administrator at DLL. I am going to ask each of our panelists to introduce yourselves. Just tell us a little bit about your roles and background, and please share what drew you to national service. And I'm going to have Rachel start, and then Jaslyn, and then Russell.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Amanda. And I'm just really honored to be on this panel with Jaslyn and Russell to talk about careers in social entrepreneurship and national service. So as was shared, I work at America's Service Commissions as the Deputy Director. And many of you probably have never heard of America's Service Commissions. We also go by ASK. We are a national association of the 52 state service commissions, which administer AmeriCorps programs throughout the country. So my role is really to support the nationwide network of state entities which fund AmeriCorps programs in each state and territory throughout the United States. And then we also provide support and services to the AmeriCorps programs within those states and territories. So I have a very unique privilege to work with AmeriCorps programs and their members throughout the country. And kind of my career leading up to that very much was involved in managing AmeriCorps programs, supporting AmeriCorps members in the programs that I oversaw, and supporting AmeriCorps and other volunteer initiatives in a variety of different roles. So I really am fortunate in my role at America's Service Commissions, which is a nonprofit association to support that network of the 52 state service commissions and work with their AmeriCorps programs. I think my kind of story of like what led me into this career definitely started at Drake. That story started at Drake, where I was very much involved in volunteering initiatives. And I helped start what is no longer in existence, but at the time, over 15 years ago, helped start an organization called the 10,000 Hour Show at Drake, which was all about engaging young people in volunteer service, and helped start the Student United Way at Drake at that time. And that led me to a career post college, really in the nonprofit sector within the realm of volunteer engagement and national service. So I can expand on that more, but that's just like a really quick overview of kind of who I am and where I currently work, and kind of what got me started. Really, it all started during my time at Drake, and really being involved on campus in kind of volunteering and service activities in the community. So I'll pause there.
Hi all, my name is Jasmine Coley. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Like Amanda said, I am the current AmeriCorps member stationed in the Office of Community Engaged Learning as a service coordinator for equity and inclusion. My primary focus within my work right now is really researching and implementing common practices as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and supporting and recruiting underrepresented students and in service and community engagement, and supporting them and where they're at with that. I was drawn to national service in a very, it wasn't a direct route. I participated in a lot of events that came out of the Office of Community Engaged Learning. I was a student employee in this office as well, so I always heard about AmeriCorps. I just never envisioned myself being a part of the program. But I saw that it called on a lot of the passions that I've already had with community engagement, networking, just trying to be creative and co-create solutions to problems that we might be seeing in our communities. So that's what naturally drew me to this position. And just having that background, like Rachel said, in undergrad with community engagement really strengthened my desire to be a part of this well. So yeah, I can definitely go into a little bit more into this as well, but I'll pass it off to Russell.
Hi, my name is Russell White, an AmeriCorps alum. I actually graduated from Drake back in 2018. And when I was an AmeriCorps member, I was serving with the Iowa Mentoring Partnership, which operates out of the Volunteer Iowa. And that role was a dream come true for me. I've always been very passionate about mentoring kids. And so that whole organization coordinates mentoring efforts, initiatives across the state with different mentoring programs, whether it's Big Brothers, Big Sisters, or more locally based mentoring groups. And I got the opportunity to really hone in on communication and marketing skills for the organization, while also getting to enjoy in some programmatic technical assistance for some of the programs. And I had so much fun with it, and my supervisor enjoyed my time being there. They actually extended my term by 3 months, so I got to get to hold on to it just for a little bit longer and had a really fun time. I was also very involved at Drake. I was on the student senate. I was in a lot of different leadership roles, so switching over to national service was actually pretty easy, although quite funny. I was actually planning to go into the Peace Corps after I graduated, but the reason why I switched over to AmeriCorps was my then girlfriend, now fiance, was actually an AmeriCorps alum as well, and she was going to be an AmeriCorps Vista leader, and she encouraged me to look more into the AmeriCorps program. And after doing some research and her being very persuasive, I decided to stick with AmeriCorps. And I'm actually very glad that I did, because I got to meet an amazing amount of people. It's such a fantastic network opportunity. And if I could, I would actually have gone back and done a second service year. My biggest regret is not doing a second service year. So if you do end up going towards the AmeriCorps route, I would highly advise doing 2 years instead of just 1.
Russell, it's not too late. You can still do another service year.
That's true.
That is a great thing about AmeriCorps. There's no upper age limit for AmeriCorps. So when I served, I did serve with somebody who was in her 60s, which was an amazing experience. There are different term lengths for AmeriCorps, anything from a summer to a full-time year or longer. Rachel, would you mind sharing a little bit more of those logistics? You know, there are a couple different AmeriCorps programs and branches, sharing a little bit about that and the lengths of service.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. So there are 3 different types of AmeriCorps programs. So the largest one is called AmeriCorps State and National, and that's where you'll see the most kind of flexibility in terms of the different types of lengths of service and different options in terms of what your service experience may look like. So within AmeriCorps State and National, you have opportunities ranging from doing direct service at an organization, usually through a nonprofit or local state and government entity, where you might be doing tutoring or you might be building houses, to doing capacity building and supporting kind of the organization's development of a variety of different initiatives. So you're going to see a wide range of different kind of member experiences, as well as different terms of service, like you mentioned, Amanda. So a full term of service is 1,700 hours, but a lot of programs also have what we call kind of a school year term of service, which is actually 1,200 hours. So a lot of your school-based programs, which about 60% of all AmeriCorps state and national programs are school-based. And so a lot of those are operating on a kind of August, September to kind of May timeframe. And those are those 1,200-hour positions. But then there's 900-hour and 450 and 300-hour positions as well. So lots of different kind of options. Some of those positions provide a living stipend. If they're full-time, they're definitely providing a living stipend and healthcare and other benefits. But some of the shorter term terms may not have a living stipend, or they may not have some of those other benefits. So it really varies, but all of those terms for AmeriCorps State National provide an education award at the end of service that can go towards paying off eligible student loans or paying for future college expenses or college tuition expenses. So that's AmeriCorps State. And then there's also AmeriCorps Vista, which I know Jaslyn is currently, I think, a Vista member. Is that right? Oh, no, you're a full-time AmeriCorps State member? Okay, sorry. But then there's also AmeriCorps Vista, which is a usually full-time opportunity. It's 24/7 for a full year. And that is usually focused on something around poverty. So helping to eliminate poverty and also doing capacity building. So again, you're not going to be doing the one tutoring a child, but you might be doing the one recruiting volunteers in the community to tutor. So more of that capacity building activity. Vista also has some summer associate or summer positions that are short term over the course of, you could do over your college summer break. That's also an opportunity, but most positions in Vista are full-time throughout the year. And then last but not least is NCCC, which is a team-based program. There are 4 NCCC campuses throughout the country, one of which happens to be here in Benton, Iowa, which is about 2.5 hours from here in Des Moines. So the NCCC program is a team-based residential program, and they're usually going out on short-term service spikes within a region in the country. So they get assignments, they're trained for that assignment, and then they go out to help for usually like a 6 to 8 week time frame. And the types of activities can vary quite a bit, but those are 10-month service terms. So there's a lot of details around like the different types of positions and different types of programs. And we can share out more as a follow-up some of that information. But that's a quick overview, and I'm sure Amanda, Jaslyn, or Russell, you might be able to expand more on that.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really helpful. As Crystal said, feel free to start putting your questions in the chat box. As you're thinking about questions, I'm going to throw one out to Russell and Jaslyn, and I'm veering off a little bit from the questions that were sent to you. So if you need a minute to think about it, no problem. But what do you think has been one of the biggest lessons you've learned, or biggest things that you will take away from your term of service? And either of you can start with that one.
Okay, bear with me because it might be an incomplete thought. I feel like as I'm reflecting through my time of service, and this is very apparent, especially when you have a lot of passion behind the work that you're involved in, you're not necessarily going into these sites and going into these organizations and events solving a problem. And that's something that I definitely had to keep reminding myself, like the things that I'm doing and the capacity that I'm building is allowing for resources, is allowing for opportunities to help combat an issue that we see, not necessarily solve it. So when I have this passion of social justice and all of these other things, you might go in thinking like, you know, my 2-year term is going to eliminate this problem, you know, and it could take a hit at your pride and your ego a little bit. But once you start to realize that you're doing more work with changing the framework that you're going into these sites with, and you start to see that you're part of the solution, you're part of creating solutions with the other people that you're working with, you're more effective. So I think that's just something that I'm still grappling with and still understanding as I'm navigating towards the end of my service, is just changing the framework of how I go into things, especially when it comes to volunteering and community engagement. If that answers your question, but that was the first thought that popped up to mind.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I'll also be a little bit all over the place with this one, but before I kind of go that route, I'll just try to make it as simple, responsive. I think for me, the biggest takeaway I got was I really grew as a professional. I took away so many skills and knowledge that I didn't have prior, because much of the things I was doing when I was at IMP, I didn't learn about while I was at Drake. I mean, I was a politics and international relations double major, so no one taught me how to make a communication strategy. No one taught me how to create like template guides and do programmatic technical assistance for these mentoring programs, because I was just going in and learning for the first time too. So I really got a amazing learning experience, and from that I've already seen me use those skills, because I'm a board member on the Iowa United Nations Association, and we're also making a communication strategy. And because of my time at IMP, I already know what to look for, I already know what to do, and it's made my life and now the organization's life a lot easier because I already had that knowledge. And so it's really nice to see that the things that I learned during that time, I'm still using today. And when I was learning those things and implementing these projects, these initiatives, I was helping mentoring programs expand their capacity for volunteers, make sure they were following best practices, which in the end benefits the children they're trying to service. So I got to benefit while also benefiting my community and the many kids throughout the state of Iowa. So it was, to me, that was the biggest takeaway, was that it really is a selfless endeavor, but you will gain so much from the experience.
Yeah, those were great answers. Let's see here. We do have a question in the chat box. I'll just jump in with that quick. So this is from Sean. Can you give us an example of a service project that you were a part of that had the greatest impact on you and the community?
I got an answer here, and it's gonna be kind of cheesy. Like, I could answer because I did one thing in which I had to create a template guide for how we conducted our technical assistance with our mentoring programs to fit best practices. And I think long-term that probably have the greatest impact on those programs in their community. But since you mentioned the greatest impact on me, I would have to say we used to do these mentor highlights every month of these like terrific examples of a fantastic match of a mentor and a mentee, like going above and beyond what is expected. And for me, I really enjoyed it because I also mentored a kid. So when I got to see these stories, it touched my heart to like see the personal impact that a lot of these volunteers were doing, and that the work that I was doing was only making their lives easier to fulfill that. So I guess I kind of gave you two answers there. So the template guide that I made, I think, has the longest term impact for these communities. But for me, I really enjoyed, because I had to call up the mentors and the parents of the mentees and interview them. So I got to hear from their mouths the stories and the memories and the impact that they personally felt by having a mentor or by mentoring a mentee. And it just reminded me why I was doing what I was doing. And I hate making phone calls. I'm a typical millennial who has phone anxiety, but I loved those phone calls because they were just so awesome. So that'd be my answer.
I would have to say my service experience would probably have to be highlighting the stories of people of color in our community that traditionally got overlooked, especially when it came into, as it pertained to like service and community engagement. So I hosted and organized a service event that highlighted the work of the Black Panthers and their ties to the local community. And I attended Drake, and I am very big on Black well-being and Black empowerment, but I didn't know the story of the Black Panthers and their connection to a park that's literally blocks away from Drake University. And when I started doing that research as a AmeriCorps and started seeing the connections between the Black Panthers and service, it really led me into this whole whirlwind of we have to highlight this, we have to share this, we have to embrace this history that we have. So it turned into a panel event where I invited local nonprofits to kind of speak on their connections to the Black Panthers and their movement and their goals with social well-being and whatnot. And then I also really focused on that event being a space for not only students, but community members as well. So I looked at that as a celebration, and 160 people showed up. It was one of the most successful events that I have organized, I think. And the reason why I keep going back to this is because not only did it allow us to hear from influential people of color in our community, but it also allowed for Drake students to know that we have local nonprofits that are here still doing this work, and that they're available and open to students being a part of their goals and their experience with helping the youth in our neighborhood. So it definitely hit a lot of goals for me, and it was impactful to say the least. So
I can try to answer this question too. And so, if it's not obvious already, one of my big secrets is that I'm actually not an AmeriCorps alum. And so, I basically have had a career basically dedicated to engaging volunteers and service and supporting national service members and AmeriCorps members. But I myself have not actually served in an AmeriCorps position yet. To your point, Amanda, I will be an AmeriCorps member and an alum in the future. But I have engaged in volunteer service extensively, and I volunteer quite a bit. I actually live in Des Moines and volunteer in the community. It's really hard to pick one example of a service project or service and volunteer activity that I've been involved in, because I feel like thinking about like the impact on me, I feel like it's all been cumulative, is that I continue to grow and learn through every kind of service experience that I participate in, as well as my own professional and personal development. So it's hard to pick just one thing. One thing that looking back on my career that engages volunteers and is still kind of a lasting initiative in the community is um, in my first kind of career, my first job out of college at Drake, I worked at United Way of Central Iowa in the volunteer center there. And I helped develop the Reach Out to Dropout program with the Des Moines Public Schools. And basically, it was an initiative that we modeled off of a program in Houston to go door to door and reach out to students, high school students that had stopped attending school for whatever reason. And it came out of a lot of conversations around like, how are we going to, get kids to graduate on time? And, basically, I think what I learned from that experience, and I'm still learning, is like the importance of meeting people where they are. And that oftentimes in our work, specifically in the nonprofit sector, we sometimes make things more complicated than they need to be. And that program was, and I think still is, about just like, let's just go talk to these students. Let's talk to these kids. Like, why aren't you coming to school anymore? How can we help you get back to school? And instead of just like looking at a piece of paper about like, oh, we have all these kids that aren't coming back to high school for whatever reason, developing a program that was literally like, we're gonna come to you and find out, like, how can we get you back to school? What do we need to support you? Can you do night school? Can we help you get a job and go to school? And so it was really about like meeting people where they are and engaging the community in that, to show these students that our community cares about them, and that we want to help them be successful in whatever that means. So that's one thing that stands out, but there are so many examples of service experiences and my own professional development and personal development that I've gained from through service.
Thank you. This is Renee, and I just want to draw attention to a question in the chat box relating to something you shared, Russell, about skills and maybe not having the skills that either were stated on the member position description or being intimidated by the skills that are qualifications. And so there's it's a clarifying question, but I was hoping that maybe you, Jaslyn, and Rachel could expand on this a little bit. So the clarifying question is, so are you saying that you learned those skills on the job? And then my follow-up question to this is, could you talk about some of the skills that you gained in your Drake experience that were applicable to doing your year of service? Or Rachel, in your case, any of the experiences that you have as well.
So I'll kind of jump in here on this one. So yes, so I actually felt the same thing you did, Marie. So when I was at Drake, part-time, I was a food server at a Tex-Mex restaurant, and then occasionally I interned on political campaigns. So I didn't really have any experience that I felt like I knew how to capacity build programs, because with being a Vista specifically, you're meant to go into these organizations and capacity build, help them run more efficiently. You kind of do like some of like the background work to make sure that they're working the best they can to service their community. And I didn't know where to begin. And then I realized once I started getting onto the job, a lot of it is sort of on-site learning. But then I also realized I actually was selling myself short, because some of the stuff I did on Drake's campus did help me prepare for this opportunity. As I'd mentioned, I'd been involved in student organizations and in leadership positions, whether it was Student Senate, whether it was through Drake Greek Life. I was also involved in some other student groups as well. And you kind of learn some of the basics through just getting involved on campus of how you can coordinate projects, how you communicate effectively with other people on things. And sometimes just knowing those basics can mean a lot. I also know, for at least for the Vista program, I won't say it for the other programs for sure, but I know that I think partially budgeted that your on-site supervisor allows you to go on to professional developments. So I sometimes actually found conferences happening in Des Moines, and she would let me go for the day to learn some new skills, learn some new knowledge. Because a lot of my stuff too was I built a communication strategy, and I managed the social media and the website for the organization. I did not have a communication or marketing degree. That was not what I went to school for. So I actually found a conference to learn more about this stuff. And by the end of my term, I knew so many things about what to do, what to look for, that I had increased our website traffic. I'd increased our followers and the people who are seeing our posts on social media. And so it is honestly okay to kind of feel a little overwhelmed at first, but don't sell yourself short. You know a lot more than you think you do, and you will learn so much while on the job. And that's kind of built into the program too. When you are serving, you'll be with other Vistas, and your Vista leader is there to support you. So if you ever have any questions or troubles, you go to your Vista leader, and your Vista leader will usually arrange for professional developments for all the Vistas and do other sort of like fun service events. And my Vista leader was amazing in doing both those things. So I got to learn professionally, and occasionally she would plan fun service events, like we made cute little Christmas packages for the homeless shelter for the kids. And that was a lot of fun. We helped move in a refugee family for Catholic Charities, and that was an easy and fun thing too. So like, you learn a lot of things, and during this period while you're learning things, your Vista leader is there to support you. So whether it's your supervisor on your site or your Vista leader, you have a lot of resources. So don't get too afraid, because you will learn, and you have an amazing support structure that the Vista program provides for you.
I would have to echo that. You literally took the words right out of my mouth, and you described that so perfectly. Yes, I felt very overwhelmed looking at the position description when I started my AmeriCorps term. And luckily for me, I have great site supervisors. They're both on this call. And what I found that they frequently did that I don't think they were intentionally doing, but what I found that they did was, because they knew me during my undergrad, and because they knew some of my background, they would voice like, oh yeah, your PR background and stuff like that. So those connections between my position description and my educational background, I wasn't necessarily making those connections because I didn't understand, like, this is a skill that I have. It might not be obvious that it ties to this work, but it does. And they're seeing that, and and them vocalizing that is allowing me to make those connections and to feel more comfortable and to venture into this space. I will also say utilizing those professional development funds is key, and definitely having conversations where you look at the position description, you understand your skill set, and you actually analyze, okay, what do I feel comfortable doing? What are some things I need to touch base with my site supervisor to see if we can change some things, to see if it can make it more applicable to your own skill set. So definitely have those conversations. I found that my site supervisors were very flexible with that. And I don't think that's a unique situation based off what Russell is saying. So yeah, take advantage of that.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Russell and Jaslyn said based on their experiences. And I would just add that I think it's part of the purpose of AmeriCorps to provide the member development component of these service opportunities. So if you are looking at a position, you're really interested in it, I would just so encourage you to go for it and apply for it, because part of the service experience is not only your role in serving the community and whatever activities you're doing, but also your own development as an AmeriCorps member, a national service participant. So you should be getting provided kind of necessary training that is needed to do that work. But also, to the points that Russell and Jaslyn made as well, is that you likely do have some of the experience either through your time working on campus, through your college courses, or through student activities that you've been involved in. There are lots of transferable skills that apply to these service opportunities that are going to help you through that work. But also, I would just say that in my own professional career as well, I feel like a lot of work that I do on a daily basis is just kind of, you fake it till you make it. And I don't love that phrase, because I don't like the idea that I'm faking it per se, but most of the things that I have done throughout my professional career, there was no kind of training for. There wasn't like, this is how you're going to be a nonprofit volunteer manager on day one, right? Like it's a learning process, and there's no kind of, here's a degree to be a nonprofit executive director. Like that you can't go through kind of all that training and then just suddenly become that person. It's really an evolution. And so I would just encourage you to be open to different opportunities. And national service is another time to kind of explore things that you can learn. Sometimes the best outcome of a service experience can be like, wow, I really didn't like that. So now you know that you're not going to dedicate your professional career to something that you just learned through a one-year experience that you really didn't enjoy. And so sometimes it's about trying new things and kind of that safe space that you can give it a shot for a year in AmeriCorps and do your best, but maybe it's not meant for you. And so now you know that. And so again, just keeping an open mind and being open to that learning throughout the service experience, I think is really important.
That's great advice from all three of you. Thank you. And Renee, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Crystal, I don't know if this is an opportunity for you to say real quickly the services that your team could provide, because I'm seeing an opportunity for example, Marie, if you wanted to get one of those position descriptions and your resume, you know, whether it's Crystal's team or our Amanda or our team, we'd be happy to consult with you and talk through the matchmaking of your skill set and that position description.
I would absolutely jump at the opportunity to talk with any student who wants to look at the transferable skills that they have from what they've already done into an AmeriCorps position or any other position. So it's super easy to make appointments with us. You can do it through Starfish or Handshake. And really, when you think about the services of the Professional and Career Development Services Office, it really is based upon your individual needs. So you schedule the appointment, you tell us what you want to talk about, and then we work with you from there. So yes, please reach out. We'd be delighted to work with you. I also plopped in some information, a link to a website on the True Blue skills. If you haven't looked at those yet, those are what we would call our career competency skills that employers are looking for. So it gives you an idea of the types of skills that any employer would be looking for. So thanks for the shout out there, Renee.
I'd like to do a quick, oh, go ahead, Renee.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to open it up for anybody on the call to unmute yourself and ask some questions you may be thinking about right now. Anybody have a question for the panelists?
I actually wanted to see if I could ask Rachel something.
Oh,
Just because I think you might have the information more readily available. Would you be able to share like the AmeriCorps benefits both during and end of term for those who are on the call?
Yeah, I can try to address that a little bit. So during your term of service, again, this varies a little bit depending on whether you're AmeriCorps Vista, AmeriCorps State National, or AmeriCorps NCCC, but most positions do offer a living stipend. So you're technically not considered an employee while you're serving. You're considered a national service participant, and you have access to a living stipend to help you pay for living expenses. And then again, depending on the position and kind of what program, some programs offer some housing or some housing supports and some other kind of benefits during your term. And then once you complete your term of service, you have access to what's called the AmeriCorps Siegel Education Award. And that is, if you're serving a full term, it's equal to the maximum amount of the Pell Grant Award. And so that amount changes every year. But usually right now, I think it's just around a little over $6,000. And so you have up to 7 years from completing your term of service to use that education award. And again, you can use that to pay off eligible student loans or to pay for future college expenses, whether you are going to go complete your undergraduate degree if that didn't happen for whatever reason, or since we're all talking to current undergraduate students, if you want to apply that to future graduate school as well. So that's kind of really quickly some of those benefits to members. And then all AmeriCorps alums actually have access to kind of this national network of AmeriCorps alums. Currently, the AmeriCorps Alums organization is housed out of an organization called the Service Year Alliance. So you can learn more at serviceyear.org. And Service Year Alliance hosts the AmeriCorps Alums organization, and they have kind of a number of benefits that are available to AmeriCorps alumni, like discounts with different companies, and really just providing professional development opportunities, virtual career fairs, ways to connect you to other alums. There are alumni chapters throughout the country as well to network with the AmeriCorps alum. And then I failed to mention that depending on your program, a service that our organization actually facilitates is called the Member Assistance Program. And we offer 24/7 mental health counseling services to AmeriCorps members through programs that enroll in the Member Assistance Program as well. So again, there's lots of different benefits that are available to members while they're serving and also once they've completed their term of service as alum, but there are some just kind of different they differ a little bit depending on the program itself, and kind of the term of service that's completed.
If I could add quick too, there is also employers of national service. So there is a quite long list of employers who have some sort of preference opportunity for people who have served in AmeriCorps, whether it's you get an automatic interview or extra points throughout the process, whatever it may be. So you can find a list of employers of national service on the AmeriCorps website as well. Thank you, Rachel. As well as there are schools of national service, and Drake recently became a school of national service, I'm happy to say. So just wanted to add that in there. Not seeing any other questions yet. I will throw another question out there. We've talked a bit about what you love about being in AmeriCorps, but with any position, I'm sure there are some challenges. What have you found to be the biggest challenges in your role as an AmeriCorps member, AmeriCorps alum, or a staff member?
I can start, and then there are so many challenges that are so frustrating, and a lot of those are just the realities of working in any job, right? I think that for someone like me that has had a career in like kind of the nonprofit public service realm, I've worked for state government, worked for a number of nonprofits, even in higher ed a little bit. I think it's really challenging how slow change is, right? And so I don't think that's probably new information for all of us, but I'm probably one of the oldest people on this call, or close to it. And so as a young professional, but I'm kind of slowly no longer going to, very soon won't be able to call myself a young professional. As a young professional, I think often we are kind of viewed from the lens of like, oh, it's so great that you're so passionate and so enthusiastic about this work. And there can be a very much of a patronizing or condescending tone that's put on young people, not just in this field, but I think probably more generally. And so I think that is really challenging to kind of overcome the kind of young person bias that often comes with someone that is working in this field, when you're really trying to push for important changes to improve your work. And certainly at the end of the day, I assume through all of our work, we're ultimately trying to improve our communities and help specific populations that we're trying to serve. And so really struggling with some of those challenges, as well as like the system challenges that we're all kind of pushing up against. I know in my personal work, I love the work that I do. I work with amazing colleagues throughout the country, but it's really challenging that the federal government, the federal entity that we work with, creates a lot of barriers and challenges to our work. And we have been pushing back on those challenges and barriers for the 10 plus years that I've been working in this field. And there hasn't been a lot of change, even though a lot of those barriers could be overcome at the federal agency level. And so you have this kind of tension of like, will those changes ever come? We've been working on them for a really long time. And so kind of continuing to keep in perspective that change takes a lot of time, and things don't happen overnight is a lesson that I'm still learning.
I think I have to echo that as well. And this kind of relates back to what I was saying earlier is within this work, you're really tackling and you're coming against some real life world problems. And going back to the whole passion piece of it all, like slow change is going to be a little aggravating. That busy work is going to be a little aggravating within this work, but it's important to just remind yourself, like it's all important. Every day of my service is leading towards another opportunity, another resource that my community can make available to students and community members to continue on this work. So that is definitely a challenge for me. And also the 2-year piece of it as well. So as an AmeriCorps, you're only allowed to serve 2 years, and I'm on my 2nd year. So with me being so passionate with the work that I'm doing right now, that sustainability piece can be a little aggravating too, but it just pushes you a little bit more to make those connections within the communities and the sites that you're at, and to work with the people who are at your site in order to continue that work when you're not in your term. So that's probably my big piece right there.
I feel so uncreative here. I don't really have anything new to add. I kind of, like, honestly, both Rachel and Jaslyn really hit on the head there. With my work, I didn't really have to deal too much with interacting with large institutions or the government, since we were just interacting with just other mentoring programs. Once you get into an office setting, you'll learn that some people aren't as great as emailing as you are, and it takes forever for them to respond. But like, with jokes aside, it's like, yeah, like you won't be able to do everything as fast as you want to do it. You'll have to kind of realize that things do take a little more slowly, whether it's because of some kind of bureaucratic slowdown, whether it's because just someone is slow at responding. There's all kinds of reasons for why things aren't going as fast as you want them, which is okay. Sometimes the best of change slowly accrues over time. And yeah, I mean, just, I won't try to go into much longer because I don't want to echo too much what you guys said, but I would basically say that's kind of the same frustration I kind of felt too, was that I wasn't able to go as fast and as hard on some of my projects and initiatives as I would have liked to. And so you end up having to sometimes find smaller projects to keep you busy while those large projects you're working on are unfolding a little bit slower than you had hoped.
Okay, any other questions from the students on the call? I have unlimited questions, so.
I just want to mention really quick, because you had mentioned that some schools, and now Drake, are institutions that now recognize that national service. And I don't know if Drake is offering, but I know that some schools out there will actually offer to match your education award, which I am using full advantage of because I'm applying to grad school right now. So I'm actually purposely picking schools that offer that, because any help to go on to grad school is amazing. And that's just another amazing benefit that I'm getting from AmeriCorps. Aside from the professional experience, they're also now going to be helping me paying for my grad school. So keep that in mind too.
Great, thank you. We have a really good question in the chat box. So this is taking me back to my service terms. What was your experience with the stipend? Have you had trouble living off of the allowance, and have you had any other jobs while serving?
I can speak to that. So I don't think I necessarily had trouble living off the stipend, but during my first year of my term, I did have a second job. So I was literally working at Drake from like 8 to 3, and then I'll work at a therapy clinic from like 3 to 8. And this was Monday through Friday. And it was because I was passionate about both of my areas of work and the things that I was doing in the community. But I found that I didn't necessarily have to work my second job. It was just based on my passions. Now, with it being my second year, you do have an increase within that stipend. Rachel, you're going to have to correct me on that with the details. But you do see a little bit of that increase, and you do see an increase and geez, I forgot what the other one was, but you do see an increase within your stipend. So that does help out a lot. And it's allowed me to solely focus on the work at Drake too. So based on my experience, no, you do have to get a little creative and, kind of prepare for that as you're entering into your term. But I found that there are a lot of conversations and a lot of resources to help you plan for that financially as well. So.
Yes, and I was in a similar position with Jaslyn here. So I didn't take on a like full-time or part-time side job, but what I did was a friend actually connected me to a position where I was doing events and catering, which was like once or twice a month. So it was just extra money on the side, just to help with things here and there. For the most part, I was able to live fairly comfortably on a living stipend. It does get tight, so you will have to learn how to budget. You don't really know how to budget properly when you're going to school. But I made it work. I was able to pay rent. I was able to get groceries, pay utilities. You may not be going to the movies as much as you'd like to, but it's just, you just have to learn how to prioritize, and it is livable. It's just, you can't, be a spendthrift. So that's all I would say. And most AmeriCorps positions, like for example, my supervisor was extremely flexible with the idea of doing like a side employment. So, and I think most supervisors are pretty flexible about that. So if you feel like you need a side job just to help fill in a few gaps here and there, they're usually pretty good with that. You just got to make sure you're very upfront with them about your scheduling needs, and then you should be okay. I didn't have any issues, and most other AmeriCorps businesses I know didn't either. But yeah, and Jasmine's right, there are resources to help you out. We actually had a professional development alone about how to budget and about resources, whether it was apps or even community resources. So if you need assistance, there is assistance.
And I would also say the loan forbearance as you're serving definitely helps as well. That way you don't have to worry about really focusing on that throughout your service too. So that's helpful.
Yeah, and Jasmine, yeah, the minimum living allowance does increase a little bit every year. So again, depending on your position, the living allowance is going to be a little bit different. And I agree, Russell. Hopefully, all AmeriCorps program supervisors will be flexible. I think it's just important to communicate and be very kind of upfront with your program supervisors about kind of what your needs are, what your schedule is, so that they can help accommodate that. And we're seeing positive shifts in the right direction in terms of the environment generally being more open and understanding that it's hard to serve in these positions. It's not a lot of money. And it's really, these positions are about kind of, again, that twofold benefit of like serving the community, but also your own kind of member professional development. So there isn't as much in terms of direct kind of living allowance, but there's these other benefits that hopefully help offset some of the costs of service. But then I also say at my organization, America Service Commissions, we are actively working and have been for several years to try to make national service more accessible to all people, regardless of their socioeconomic background, and ensure that all people have that opportunity to serve, so that the living allowance being too little isn't a barrier to people serving. And so that's something we're actively trying to address. And right now we've been working with Congress to try to increase the amount of resources that are provided to programs so that they can hopefully continue to increase the living allowance that is provided to members. So unfortunately, that's more of a big picture, long-term conversation, but that's something that we certainly in the field are very conscientious of and have been working for several years. And I'm optimistic that there is some light at the end of the tunnel, that we may be making the case well to increase that living allowance and make it more accessible to more people.
Great, and thank you for your advocacy there. So we are starting to near the end, and we do have a few other things we'd like to share with you just about the pathways for civic action and social change, and our final panel of the series coming up in April. But first, I want to give a huge thank you to our three panelists. I feel very enlightened. I learned so much. I hope everybody else did too. So thank you, Russell, Jaslyn, and Rachel, for taking your time this evening to share more about your experiences. Okay, and if you can bear with us for just a couple more minutes, I will hand it over to Renee, if you don't mind sharing a little bit.
Yes. So for those of you who are on the journey of still exploring and figuring out where your niche is for community engagement, we invite you to participate in what we have called the Pathways for Civic Action and Social Change tool. So this webinar today is part of that broader framework. And what we're trying to model is that there's lots of different ways to get involved and create change in your community. And this tool has an assessment component. So it's a Qualtrics component where you will actually go in and you there's 6 different paths identified that then you give you rank based on your interest area, how much impact you think it will have, how much impact you think you can make in that area. And what happens at the end is it spits out a kind of an assessment of that. And what we then have is a group of students in our office who are trained to walk you through that assessment and help you understand it a little bit better. And then more importantly, get you connected to areas where you can start to take action. This is also, I think, helpful for those of you who might be exploring service positions or even the public service sector post-grad, and will help you kind of think through what are the areas of change and engagement that you are most interested in, what kind of skill sets maybe should you be trying to hone while you've got time yet left in college. So more information is on our website. We'll put it in the chat box, but if you go to drake.edu/CEL, look for student opportunities and then click pathways. You can also email Amanda directly and get the information that way as well. But the link to the survey is available on that website, as well as the opportunity to schedule then a follow-up session with one of our community engagement peers. We have one more upcoming panel. Man, the semester has gone so fast. One more upcoming panel for this series this spring on April 6th. So be sure to tune in, share it with your colleagues. We will have a Peace Corps alum and the regional recruiter, as well as a loaned executive from the United Way. So someone who is working in the corporate sector, but then this loan program allows him to actually work for the United Way for a portion of his job. And we are working on confirming a third speaker, but it's going to be folks from all over the direct service sector, not just AmeriCorps or Peace Corps. And so we're specifically looking probably to find someone who's working in nonprofit, doing volunteer coordination, or executive director of a nonprofit that works a lot with direct service. So more to come on that, and you can sign up via Handshake. Back to you, Amanda.
All righty, well, that's all we have for you this evening. Thank you everyone for joining us. We hope to see you at the next event and have a great evening. Take care.
Thank you.